So we're milling a pretty big log today, but it's really short. Came off the very base of the tree, so there's not a lot of width. So I had to kind of make a temporary log bunk and see if I could get on here the best I could. I'm not crazy about it. It seems pretty solid, but I'm actually only going to try to take just a little bit of the top off, trim it down a little bit so it's a little bit lighter. And the idea is to try to cant it, but actually make halves out of it. There's a huge crack in the pith in the center of the log. So I'm going to try to work my way down to that, take these guys off. Since it's so short, it's probably only going to be something like legs for a bench or something like that. So I'll probably actually do 3-inch wide boards, 3-inch wide slabs out of it and kind of work my way up from that center. I'm going to measure out, lay out 3-inch pieces roughly up from that center, and then we'll start kind of taking those slabs. That should get this guy down to a little bit more manageable size. I'm amazed there's a flare at the bottom, and I trimmed a little bit of that with the chainsaw, but I'm so happy that it fits without having to do much more whittling. I'm really impressed with the width that you get out of this. Woodland mills, they put the rollers on the inside of the frame, so that even gives you a little bit more clearance. So as long as I can keep the log pretty much inside the angles in the frames, then I can clear it. And so we'll get this guy whittled down a little bit so that he's a little bit more manageable, and then start kind of cleaning up those slabs a little bit. So let's see how it goes. Couple of quick comments. I'm so happy that I made this frame for it. I was able to slide 2x4s into that, and that kind of helped me create a space to help kind of get this guy leveled off. That was probably the hardest part because it's flared, so it's hard to get it level. So what I did is I measured up from the concrete here, and it's about 28 inches to this crack, which is right in the pith of the log. So I measured 28 inches up on this side and 28 inches up on the other side. I know that the sawmill's level, so that should pretty much put our cuts even coming out. So that's a good way to level this. It's hard to put a level on or do anything like that. And I've tried to basically get the crack horizontal here. It's a heavy log, and I'm trying to kind of just manhandle it to be more precise. I'd say it's not quite level, but I think I anticipate probably not even using this middle slab here. I'll be working my way up 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches from that centerpiece. I think given the size of this crack, and it comes out the other end, my guess is this middle board wouldn't be worth a whole lot. So I think that guy's pretty much going to get cut out, and then everybody working their way up will be hopefully good slabs. So we'll see how it goes. But that's kind of the process for getting the blade to kind of ride through and give you an even distance out of this crack. You wouldn't want to have this not level and come through and actually be cutting angly through that, so you'd wind up with a crack in one board on one side and not on the other. So it's a good way just to level up, get that center crack or that pith. You'll always see a little dot here where the middle is. Just get that lined up, get it even on both ends, and then you start kind of milling through. So we'll fire up the mill and see how this goes. never really cut anything on the mill this direction, but it was the easiest way to put the log on. Plus it's short this way, so I thought, well, I'd be able to clear it real easy. But so what the orientation is the grain is going the same direction as the saw blade is. And I hadn't thought about this, but I guess it's true when you're ripping wood or anything like that with the grain. It makes these kind of curly sawdust rather than making kind of more of the cross cut that you'd see the smaller stuff. And so I didn't expect it, but it actually gets clogged up inside the mill. It's too kind of curly, it tangles all up, and it won't go out through the chute, and it kind of got all in around the pulley. So I don't know if anybody's ever done this like me, but lesson learned, and maybe it'll avoid you doing it. You can't really cut them this way. You can't put the end grain towards the blade and cut up through the tree basically, because it'll just make this hairy stuff and clog up your mill. So I guess it's time to spin this log around, get it back in the direction that it was before, and finish it out. So this for me is a dead giveaway when my blade is dull. And I usually have a pretty slow feed speed, so, and you know, cutting oak and long slabs like this, it doesn't really stop cutting. I guess it has enough horsepower that it pretty much pushes the blade through, and so far these blades have done a great job. But I almost always notice this right at the end of the blade's life. I get this, hopefully you can see that there's this rounded edge right here. It's just a big hump, and the blade has a tendency to kind of wander when it gets dull, really, and I don't know why that is. Maybe somebody knows, but almost every time that I need to replace a blade, the last cut right before I do it, I get two kind of warning signs. I get kind of a real weird saw tooth marks where they're more pronounced. They're a lot more pronounced, and I can see them. And then somewhere along that log, if it hits anything that has a different density or anything like that, it'll have a tendency to wander in the log. As soon as I change the blade, put a fresh blade on it, all that goes away. So, I don't know if that's the same for everybody, but at least in my experience, I have noticed that it almost always creates this hump. Kind of, it'll ride knots, or it'll kind of waver in the cut. And almost immediately afterwards, I did it just to kind of confirm it, I guess. But when I go to make that next cut, it immediately stops. It just won't cut it. You push it into it, and you can kind of smell it burn a little bit, and it just stops cutting. So this is like the last cut of its life. And then after that, it's time to change a blade. So let's get to that. So I knew we were getting down to that pith where that crack was. I always like doing this. I like looking at the wood. I knew that it was going to be cracked there. But I really like cutting it all the way down to kind of see what's going on inside the log. And this is where that crack was. Let's see if I can get a kind of a profile for it. So we knew it opened up somewhere in here, and it extends. It was still kind of diagonal and wavy, so it extends down into the next piece, into what was left of the big slab. So that's our last. We finished out that slab, and that's what's left of it.